Can you see me now? Older Marty McFly suffers the ultimate indignity when his boss, Mr. Fujitsu, fires him while he's at home via video chat on his wall-mounted video screen.
Read my
facts! No! Please, no, I cannot be fired! I'm fired!
That's not so crazy today. Not only are flat wall-hung TVs commonplace, but employers can fire their underlings via video all they want with software like Skype and FaceTime. But then whatever points you give the movie might be negated by its prediction of a house filled with fax machines.
With millions of people who are now working from home around the world, and specifically here in America, companies are now considering and are putting in digital surveillance tools to make sure their employees are actually working from home, and they're making this mandatory.
To some degree, many of us are already being monitored. On my personal phone, screen time shows when I'm most active and which apps I use most. And on my work computer, the communication platform Slack notifies colleagues about whether I'm active or away.
In a way, that's a form of surveillance right there. And I think the question is, how far are we all willing to go?
With so many working from home, some companies are now using tools to determine whether people are actually doing their jobs. It's called digital surveillance, and the demand for monitoring software has gone up.
16% of companies, they order these kind of software because they'd like to monitor their employees. And companies on the other side who provide these kind of services, they saw 40% increase from their current customers, asking for more licenses.
More licenses to monitor more employees. While companies feel digital surveillance will help increase productivity, some argue whether it really invades privacy.
This is all very new in terms of legal ground and whatnot. But I think one of the interesting things will be is that the question of whether or not employers should even take the step.
Experts say these new tools require trust and transparency, communication about what's actually being recorded. Is your boss keeping track of your keystrokes? Will cameras or microphones be turned on? Will messages be read?
The employer have a responsibility of telling the employees, this is the software we are using for monitoring. And this is what we're going to monitor.
Workplace surveillance isn't new, but trying to navigate the process during this pandemic definitely is. In San Jose, I'm Amanda Del Castillo, ABC 7 News.
So this is just frightening for people who are forced now to work from home, who might have office jobs, so they still have to be online. Well, this is another way for them to monitor you, right? Where they could say, well, we need to know, as if you're in an office anyway, somebody's walking by, like in the movie Office Space, every 5 seconds and going, what's happening? And they're up your butt. I mean, I get it. You have managers and bosses who could be up your rear end with stupid tasks and things like that. But I love how they pretend like, well, if you're in the office, you're really being monitored. Like people aren't on their phones and on Facebook from time to time. Well, now they want to literally be able to have access to your computer. And even, as you heard in the video, watch how many words you're typing. I mean, this is ridiculous if the American people allow this to happen.
There's a highlight here just on, it says Facebook's famous 10 friends rule. Okay, so what is Facebook's famous 10 friends rule? I had to go into that and see what that was really about. And what it is Facebook says that if it has 10 of your friends, it knows who you are. That its system is capable of knowing who you are. And this, of course, is how the marketing works. This is how the relevancy works. This is how the targeting works with getting ads to the proper people, etc. So it goes on the virtuous cycle: more usage, more data, better recommendations, more engaging feeding, and more usage is what could be promised if you re-engineer from the core the system, okay? And so re-engineering the system from the core, it says, as Taotao complains, to be able to learn a user's preferences after just 24 hours of use. The recommendations engine is built on a deep understanding of users' content and context. And that, of course, is being handled by the AI. So within 24 hours, Taotao's system that anybody loads on their phone will know so much about that person. It will be able to do, it has a deep understanding, not just a understanding, a deep understanding. Okay, so finalizing here, it's talked about that these digital payments and an adoption of defined vertical. Okay, so this is what I was explaining about And actually, these are my screenshots about the numbers, actually. Now, this is, again, what I was explaining about how what adoption really means from a numbers level, and why that whole $500 million that they keep saying, like Bezos is, oh, he's got $400 million, blah, blah, blah. Man, that's, it's petty. The reason why Forbes is not even including China anymore inside of its richest people in the world, period, or you would only have Chinese people sitting there. So when you're talking about 12.8 trillion, okay? So it's saying that China's payment apps, 12.8 trillion. US, 578 billion in PayPal. So this is why remember when Elon was saying, hey, I think we need to go in a different direction with this. We need to create even something like Neuralink to defend a potential situation that could happen in the future with AI. Now, he said this almost 9 or 10 years ago when they started developing Neuralink. Now you see exactly what he was talking about. What he was saying is, hey, China is developing their AI so fast, the US is not going to implement AI until AI. When are they going to implement it? Because they can ask AI. It's still going to be 10 years until this law is moved, until this. It'll give them all the quotients. And with that assessment, it's like, well, we need to probably even try to create like a superhuman. Somebody who's able to put an AI into their brain and be able to keep helping us, because in a moment, even we as the owners of PayPal, this is Elon Musk and this is Peter Thiel. We as the owner of PayPal, we have 578 billion, but our competitor has 12.8 trillion.
The least scary future I can think of is one where we have at least democratized AI. Because if one company or small group of people manages to develop godlike digital superintelligence, they could take over the world. At least when there's an evil dictator, that human is going to die. But for an AI, there would be no death. It would live forever. And then you'd have an immortal dictator from which we can never escape.
At some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI? You mean artificial intelligence?
A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines. We don't know who struck first, us or them. But we know that it was us that scorched the sky.
The robots going down the streets, they're like, what are you talking about? Man, we want to make sure we don't have killer robots going down the street. Once they're going down the street, it is too late.
So we have a rapidly emerging scenario that is now taking place. Now, then it may be going to take place. Now it is happening, and we need to prepare for that.
I'm really I'm very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows, and the rate of improvement is exponential. You can see this in things like AlphaGo, which went from, in the span of maybe 6 to 9 months, it went from being unable to beat even a reasonably good Go player to then beating the European world champion, who was ranked 600, then beating Lisa Doll 4-5, who had been world champion for many years, then beating the current world champion, then beating everyone while playing simultaneously. Then there was AlphaZero, which crushed AlphaGo 100-0. And AlphaZero just learned by playing itself, and it can play basically any game that you put the rules in for. Whatever rules you give it, just literally read the rules, play the game, and be superhuman. For any game.
That leapfrogged its way beyond the people who developed it. Okay, so finishing off here, the iteration. So actually, this is not about reading. This is just to show you some numbers. So we're just going to talk some numbers here. You see that 12.8 trillion versus that little $500 million. Now, all these numbers are stupid to me and people like me and you, though, I will say. Like, these folks are treating 100,000 like it's a $20 bill. Like, serious. Like, when was anybody talking trillions to you? There's also even I think it's in one of my final slides here, but it talks about how they even had a situation where China had given some companies billions of dollars and then even told them they had a short period of time to spend it all. You notice how it's like the other way around. Investors come to you and they're like, look, we need a return. Let's try to spend as least amount of the working capital as possible. And they're going to you on all this. China is like, here's $1 billion. You need to spend that in 1 year. We'll be back. This is the kind of checks that are being passed out. So you can imagine how many also allegiances and alliances have changed. And this is another big thing.
This is the largest global government summit. We have over 139 government here. If you want to advise government official to be ready for the future, what is 3 things or 3 advice you'll give them?
Well, I think the first bit of advice would be to really pay close attention to the development of artificial intelligence. But what to do about mass unemployment? This is going to be a massive social challenge. And I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Universal basic income.
Universal basic income. I think it's going to be necessary.
So it means that unemployed people will be paid across the globe.
Yeah.
Because there is no job, machine, robot is taking over.
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better.
Okay.
That's simply and I want to be clear that these are not things that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. And if my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Now, the output of goods and services will be extremely high. So with automation, there will come abundance. There will be almost everything will get very cheap. I think I think we'll just end up doing a universal basic income. It's going to be necessary. The harder challenge, much harder challenge, is how do people then have meaning? Like a lot of people, they derive their meaning from their employment. So if you don't have, if you're not needed, if there's not a need for your labor, how do you, what's the meaning? Do you have meaning? Do you feel useless? That's a much harder problem to deal with.
This is why you see a skirmish going on. You know how there is a common concept that they all are working on the same side, but yet we keep seeing these internal skirmishes where they seem to all like have issues and problems with each other. That's happening even more. That's actually what's breaking it down the most. You have it like, well, Bill went and took his entire railroad company to China. I thought we were all in allegiance together. And then another one like, could you blame him, Trent? I mean, geez, he's got 5,000 kids. I mean, he's got to take care of, you see what I mean? Or 5,000 employees, basically, that he's got to take care of. So there's a lot of alignments that are actually coming out of alignment because basically these capitalists are going to where the money is. And then you have the devout patriots in the big corporations standing on the other end saying, we need to make this illegal. That's actually also what happened with the whole thing with Saddam Hussein. That one of the biggest things that happened with 9/11 was the freezing of all the bank accounts. It was so many of them. So many bank accounts got frozen. You may even know somebody. Your boy Hafiz that was selling stuff on the corner market got his bank account frozen because the U.S. was like, look, we need to stop all this money coming in and all these investments that they're doing, and they're doing it through these bank accounts. We need to make them terrorists, and we need to stop this money. And these are the part of things that you can see happening in the background. But who had that memo? Now you just have a memo directly on what all this around you is about.
And then how do we ensure that the future is going to be the future that we want, that we still like? No, I mean, I do think that there's a potential path here which is, and we're really getting into science fiction or sort of advanced science stuff, but having some sort of merger with biological intelligence and machine intelligence. To some degree, we are already a cyborg. You think of like the digital tools that you have, your phone, your computer, the applications that you have, like the fact that, as I was mentioning earlier, you can ask a question and instantly get an answer from Google or from other things. And so you already have a digital tertiary layer. I say tertiary because you can think of the limbic system, kind of the animal brain or the primal brain, and then the cortex, kind of the thinking, planning part of the brain, and then your digital self as a third layer. So you already have that, and it's like if somebody dies, their digital ghost is still around. All of their emails and the pictures that they posted and the social media, that still lives, even if they if they died.
Tencent has deployed $62 billion in over 350 companies since 2012. Those are disclosed deals alone. So they don't know how many corporations and companies Tencent owns. 62 billion. Alibaba, PM, and Lazada. That Paytm is the one that took over 25% of China's GDP and financial transactions and currents moving through. Strategic Stake, GoTech, Snapchat, Reddit, all your favorite apps. They got big stakes, meaning that they have 20 to 30% of the companies that even you feel are like American companies, right? But they're shareholder companies, to be very clear. Once a company goes public, who owns those shares? So this is strategics. This is the real art of war. Like they wrote the book. You would have to think that they would at some point start using it. Again, I want it to be very clear. This is not a direct blow against China, where everybody acts like they don't see what's coming, so they don't prepare for it, and then they're all whining about it when it happens. And it's like, no, we're more than prepared. We're more than capable. We're the most advanced beings on the planet. Like we're invading Earth. Like you guys are waiting on the alien invasion. Like we invaded Earth. What are you talking about? Like people need to expect us and see us coming, not us be looking to the sky and expecting to see something else coming here. So anyway, we won't get on that conversation today. But as you see, Alibaba and Tencent were both jumpstarts by strategic investments. Jack Ma built his company in his apartment. This will also let you know the difference in an American company versus the difference between a Chinese company. For them to have everybody inside this little bitty apartment in the US, they would have shut everybody down. And you would have had all of these people would have been the owner. Whitehouse.gov/AI, artificial intelligence for the American people. So they have a plan. Second, the National Security Council for Artificial Intelligence. Who's sitting there? Obviously, one of the key leaders of Alphabet.com, one of the key leaders in not only the military-industrial complex, one of the key leaders of not only intelligence and central intelligence and also other organizations overseas. You have In-Q-Tel, which of course is the Central Intelligence's brand of computer technology and embedding and deployment. And you have many big names that nobody knows anything about because nobody is studying. This is what they say, that because when people learn how to read, they never really cherished it as much as those who created reading. And what that means is that this linguistic thing is deep because when you learn to read and you get your knowledge from what you learn, you go and study all of this. And then you know who you're dealing with. And then you're not surprised when this ends up panning out as JEDI, the Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure. And $10 billion goes into it, where Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, and IBM, which are all of our major corporations that deal with technology, also co-chaired by who? Safra Catz. That's Safra Catz. Okay, just doing your homework. That's it. In the university, they only ask that you just do your homework. Okay, so who's really like programming and getting things going on? Because that happens when you're a child. Like all your subset is basically sitting inside of a movie on a reel somewhere. And we talked about how the reel is everything about occultism, how the reel is designed, even the math that's being used, the terms that are being used, the actual Hollywood reel, the projector, the lights, the negatives, the stars, all of that, that's all universal construction, okay? So who's here? Well, you leave it up to yourself to decide if you want to look through this. I'll say it that way, because that could be on your own time. I'm just telling you that, well, let's take a second here. Safra is also here. So all of these people, which again, you could take your time in looking through them, make real decisions. And what I mean by that is that these people are so intrinsically involved in the future of the United States and the growth of the most wealthiest families in the world,